My name's Sarah Wells and I'm an advisor with the Farming and Wildlife Group Advisory Group Southwest. So the charity FWAG Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group was established in the 1960s by a group of sort of forward-thinking farmers who recognised the link between sort of the environment and a sustainable farming business. And the mission of FWAG is to promote and enhance the conservation of wildlife, the environment and the landscape in relation to modern agricultural needs. And of course, we're also looking at how modern agricultural needs fit with our other recognised needs of society, such as flood risk mitigation, climate change mitigation, etc. FWAG currently exists as regional groups, of which FWAG Southwest is one, but we all come under the National FWAG Association umbrella body. So within England, there will be various different FWAG organisations. So I just wanted to pick out a couple of options in this 10 minutes. One of the options that I feel is a great benefit in terms of bringing the environment into the field and getting field scale benefits is GS4, which is legume and herb rich sward's. So the option provides fantastic sort of feed and forage for livestock. It's very productive. It is rich in minerals and good for protein, and it can be grazed by livestock or cut. So one of the things that it can really do is help to improve the soils, looking at your organic matter, your structure of soils, increasing infiltration, as well as all those benefits above ground that it has to pollinators and habitat for insects. So, and some of the species that are in these herbal leys, such as sort of chicory, sainfoin, and bird's foot trefoil, they're naturally anthelmintic, which is another great benefit to livestock. Okay. Eligibility for the option. It has to be on only arable or temporary grassland as identified in your basic payment scheme, or on permanent grassland, but it must have been cultivated and resown within the last 5 years. And that's really just to protect any permanent grassland that has its own sort of environmental benefits as it is. And again, I've listed a couple of places where this option can't be used, so worthwhile to be aware of that. So land at risk of erosion, or if there's any archaeological or historic features because of the deep rooting nature of some of these fantastic plants within them. So I mentioned the benefits to insects and to pollinators as part of this option, and one of the key things around that is that the sward must be left to rest for a minimum of 5 weeks between the start of May and the end of July each year. So that really provides a period for everything in that mix to flower. And to be honest, how these mixes work or leys work, 5 weeks is not, wouldn't be abnormal in terms of if you were going in grazing, sort of mob grazing, and then giving a good rest period for everything to recover. In terms of the mix, you're looking at things like red clover as a key legume in there, and then 5 sort of different species of grass. Due to the species in the mix and sort of soil temperatures, it shouldn't be drilled later than sort of after September time, really, but ideally you want it in by the 1st of September so that it gets away well. So just a few tips and guidance specifically on the option. Because of the seeds, you want to be drilling very shallow, no deeper than sort of 1 centimetre. Really key to have that fine seed bed and to roll so you get the good seed soil contact, and potentially even roll again if you're unsure. The grazing management, as I've mentioned, is important in order to retain all the species that are in the mix when you drill it. Really want to look at that rotational grazing, otherwise livestock can take out some of the most palatable species in there. There's a few other things I put on my slide, but I'm eating through my time, so I think I'm going to have to move on. Just to say there are plenty of resources online about these herb and legume lays, sort of guidance notes and webinars, and they're really easy to find if you want to find out a bit more. Record keeping, it's just about keeping those notes on everything that happens on that parcel, so your operations and sort of stock records. Okay. Another option, which is a bit similar in term to GS4, but different in that it's suitable if you don't have access to livestock on your farm. There's no one nearby who would want to graze or take the forage. So this is an alternative for purely sort of a very arable business or arable landscape, and that's AB15, 2-year sown legume fallow. So the mix is designed to give a 2-year break essentially to the soil, and for that to be funded through the scheme with the benefits that will provide to, in recognition of the benefits that will provide to soils, but also insect habitat and foraging again. So 2-year option is potentially easier to fit into the farm rotation than say the GS4, which typically you want to be in the ground for 3+ years. And as I said, build organic matter and structure, and those legumes in it again are helping to fix nitrogen. It can be used as part of a blackgrass control strategy. That will obviously also be dependent on how it's destroyed following the 2 years and establishment after that. The real environmental benefits to this mix come in the second spring, summer, when it has a long rest period where it cannot be cut. And so everything's going to flowering for the insects, and also potentially sort of nesting, ground nesting habitat for birds as well. The payment on this is higher than the GS4, and really that's in recognition that it cannot be grazed or conserved for forage. Eligibility is similar to GS4, has to be used on arable or temporary grassland, but there aren't those restrictions on not being able to be used on land at risk of erosion, or if there's historic or archaeological features. In terms of the mix, looking at least 6 flowering species, and some grass can be included. In terms of establishment, it would be to put in after harvest in first year, and then keep for 2 years, so that in your year 3 of the agreement, you then put it back into the arable rotation. Within the first year, you can cut the mix at twice as a minimum, and that's to stop blackgrass going to seed, so part of that blackgrass control strategy. In the second year, it can be cut once, but then, as I said, has to be left for that long period for the environmental benefits of bird nesting and foraging and insect habitat. Okay, and really, I suppose in the first year, when you can cut this option repeatedly, one of the things to really think about is that trying to achieve blackgrass control, is it necessary? What's that impact in terms of ground nesting birds or insects? So making an informed decision if you are cutting, why that is. Okay, already mentioned about blackgrass side of it. I'll move on quickly. So another option I wanted to touch on is one of the more standard options people may have used in the past already, but still really, really valuable, and that's AB9, which is the winter bird seed. So it's providing those small seeds throughout the autumn winter period for birds. Key thing, trying to take out perhaps awkward corners in fields to make the remainder more efficient to work. And you can choose between sort of annual or 2-year mixes to give you some variety. And for example, the type of mixture can be varied too between those that are cereal based and those that are brassica based. Ideal location is sort of next to a hedge, so you've got some nice cover for birds to fly into that's going to be staying there all winter. And sunny and fertile sites are best, which you may think competes with, you know, your crop growing areas. But again, I suppose it's thinking of those awkward corner sites that can make the field more efficient to work by taking them out. It's tempting to put them in rubbish ground, but it will make it trickier for yourself sort of long term. Okay, I'm going to skip on because we're a bit short on time, but just to say 2-year mixes tend to include things like kale. They provide really great winter cover in the first year, and then in the second year come into the fore in terms of their seed production. There's a really great table out there somewhere which shows you all the seeds that birds will eat on farmland. And if you look at kale, that's the one that sort of the most different species of farmland bird really enjoy eating. So I really would encourage you to try sort of some of the 2-year mixes with kale in, if possible. And something that goes alongside AB9 is I suppose a slightly newer option has only really come to the fore in the last sort of 5 years, is supplementary winter feeding for birds, AB12. And so for every 2 hectares of AB9 option you can have 1 tonne of this supplementary feed. And it literally is what it sounds. It's going out and spreading these supplementary seeds to support birds over winter. Really key to helping birds survive the hungry gap and making them in better condition at the start of the breeding period. So just to finish off a bit with how FWAG can help, we do a lot of countryside stewardship work for clients. So in the last 5 years, we've done over 600 applications covering nearly 50,000 hectares of land in agreement. And you can see there some of the figures in terms of the revenue payments that have been secured from 2021 applications, sort of totaling 11.5 million, and sort of making sure we try and get the most in terms of those capital investments that are useful on farm as part of the options too. As part of countryside stewardship as well, FWAG's also leads on a number of facilitation funds within the Southwest, and that really provides an opportunity through group events to sort of help with countryside stewardship, getting the options out there and working, and with applications, and looking at how as a group we can maximise those benefits through both the schemes but also voluntary actions as well. Okay, just quickly to say there is always annually Natural England and the RPA have a certain amount of free funded advice for countryside stewardship, and that's not just in the Southwest, that's sort of England wide, and that will be introductory webinars explaining about mid-tier and how to apply, and then also one-to-one online sort of 1.5 hour sessions that will be available. So that's something that FWAG sort of have helped deliver on behalf of Natural England and the RPA. And there's our contact details. I think that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. That was wonderful. I'm going to remove your spotlight, so we'll hopefully come back together. So there are a few questions at this point. So let's go for 3 and then we'll move on to the next speaker. So Rob has said, hello, thinking about GS4, is there a comparative option for arable reversion? and Dan's kindly offered SW7 as an option, but I wondered if you had anything just to add to that, Rob's question.
Yeah, arable reversion. I mean, I suppose you could use, in theory, GS4 as a means to put something down from arable to grass, and just you might slightly change the mix within the boundaries of what's allowed to make it more long term, or ensure at least sort of the grass species and things that they're long lived that are going to be in there. As Dan says, SW7 is an option that is or has been restricted on if you're in a high priority water quality area from catchment sensitive farming. Going forward, I think they will be available in the medium priority areas as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Next question from William, and just want to ask, you know, as a advisor for FWAG, do you have any clients with successive cutting silage in reference to GS4? I
know there are other advisors in FWAG Southwest that do, and that know more about the silage cutting side of it than myself. So it can, but I think it is useful to do your research on that, certainly, in terms of what best works, and if there are certain species you might want to leave out or sort of go towards. So yeah, sorry, I haven't got those specific details, but the information is definitely out there, and feel free to contact FWAG.
Yeah, no, can always put you in contact with William if more information is needed. Two very, very quick questions just to finish off. Neil's asked, can AB15 stay in the same field parcel for a 5-year period?
It can do, but it must be re-established in year 3. So because the costs are, or the payment rates are worked out based on how much it would cost you to do certain things, and it specifies it must be re-established. So yes, but you do still have to.
Brilliant. And last question, is it possible to add buckwheat to AB15 option to hold the sward up so it doesn't flatten and become unsuitable for the grade partridge? And this person trialled an area this year and found it to be a potential issue.
So I don't see any reason why you couldn't include it, as long as that fits within the specifications of the mix that's listed. So you'd still have to have, you know, certain proportions of other things in there, like your clovers, but it might depend on, you know, how much buckwheat is needed in order to hold it up. So take a look carefully at those, the suggested mix.
Brilliant, thank you. And as for the other speakers, if there's any questions to come at the end, then we'll have a session for questions then. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much. That's really good.